My name is Toshi Futamata, the University of Tokyo. Today's topic is innovation and negotiation. Under the changing global business landscape, to sustain business, it is crucial to be innovative. However, innovation is challenging. You have to bring your innovation to fruition together with your partners. Acquiring a skill set for conducting negotiation is an indispensable part of achieving innovation. Today, I would like to explain how the negotiation theory has evolved in recent years and how you should prepare yourselves to engage with your counterpart at the negotiation table. First of all, we have to understand what negotiation is. Negotiation is a tool to bridge the gap between the as-is and to-be. You are currently living in the as-is model, but in order to successfully create the future model, you have to narrow and eliminate the gap by continually engaging in negotiations. Negotiation is a vital tool by which you can shape the future. According to the business phase, there are different types of negotiation. In the R&D phase, negotiations are required in, for example, joint development, university industry collaboration, licensing in, etc. In the production phase, negotiations are necessary in OEM, M&A, etc. In the sales phase, negotiations are important for licensing out. Business is rather uncertain of what the future holds, and limited capability to foresee the future might lead to the conflicting view and divergent interest. This is true not only between you and your business partner, but also among the members of the same team or organization, as there may be conflicting view among members. Typically, in the R&D phase, the inability to foresee the future might lead to serious challenges. Negotiations in the sales phase are challenging because of different reasons. It comes more from tangible business risk before your eyes. Negotiation theory is developed and evolved. The oldest traditional model is called zero-sum negotiation, which is now win-lose model. That is to say, both parties struggle for a fixed pie, and winner takes all. Harvard Professor Fisher and Urey proposed a new negotiation style called principled negotiation in their 1981 book, The Getting to Yes. Principled negotiation aims to create value and solve problems through the joint effort of both parties to the negotiation. The party to a negotiation table tackle the problem at hand together on the basis of jointly created objective standards. Between the zero-sum negotiation model and the principal negotiation model, there is a huge leap in theory. But even the principal negotiation model has to face new challenges. Business society is highly globalized, and in An increased number of players make negotiation more difficult. In addition to the changes associated with globalization, research into human factors has made significant progress. Professor Kahneman, Tversky have made significant contribution to the negotiation theory through their research into human factors. Principled negotiation have evolved into the so-called beyond principled negotiation model. These negotiation theories are alive and coexist. Basic framework for given negotiation varies depending on the level of parties to the negotiation. Namely, there are negotiations between individuals, groups, organizations, and countries. The character of negotiation is different for each respective level. Lower-level negotiations are comparatively simple, and there is a good chance to find common ground for agreement. Meanwhile, the higher the level of the negotiation, the more complicated the negotiation. And the discovery that parties with divergent views and conflicting interests is a frequent occurrence. Negotiations have two phases before an agreement can be reached. It is important to separate the preparation into two stages in order to understand the nature of forthcoming negotiation. The first stage is your solo play, and the second stage is a mutual play. In the first stage of preparation, two issues are the key to bring your negotiation successful. One is goal setting, and the other is due diligence, DD. You should not enter into negotiation without first setting goal in advance. When you perform goal setting, you have to follow SMART goal setting. SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. DD, or due diligence, should be carried with respect to both the business and technical aspect of a given business transaction. With goal setting and DD complete, you can move to the next phase, the persuasion phase. You are now at the negotiation table in the second stage of the negotiation, where unlike the first stage, you face new challenges in persuading your counterpart. It is the start of the new game. While the first stage remains a comparatively logical game, the game in the second stage is fought with a human error, namely bias or prejudice. The most famous type of bias are cognitive biases, as reported by Tversky and Kahneman. So to say, fixed pie bias or vividness bias, non-rational escalation of commitment or comparative arousal. The last one is a framing error, risk framing or chance framing. While you are in the persuasion stage, so you have to be capable of grasping the interest of your counterpart. There could be a huge gap between your own interest and the interest of your counterpart. It is imperative that you grasp the interest of your counterpart when at the negotiation table. Power listening or power phrasing are the most common tool for understanding the interests of your counterpart. Now we came to the end of part 1. we have seen the basic structure of negotiation and required skill of negotiation. In part 2, I would like to focus on both due diligence and goal setting, and welcome Mr. Kimura, patent attorney. His wealth of experience as a practitioner give hints for your understanding of IP negotiation. First, I would like to ask your understanding of due diligence and why it is necessary.
Okay. Basically, due diligence refers to evaluating the object of transaction before business transaction. In the field of IP negotiation, it means the investigation of IP and business before the negotiation. The process is twofold, encompassing the task of gathering information, followed by the task of analyzing the information.
Okay. Could you describe the details of the workflow, the course of progress, and the related issue to the performance of due diligence?
Mm-hmm. In many cases, a team is formed to carry out due diligence. This is because there is a large amount of work involved. A single individual cannot adequately handle. Of course, the type of team depends on the scale of transaction. When the transaction is small, the team is often composed of a few company employees. On the other hand, in the case of large transaction, a large team is formed, including experts from outside the company.
So, due diligence is definitely carried out using a team?
Yes. Due diligence requires that information from a variety of fields be gathered and analyzed. Generally, a single individual will be unable to cover the entire range encompassed by due diligence.
I see. So please describe the steps you just mentioned in slightly more details.
Okay. Before commencing due diligence, it is necessary to determine the overall framework. During information gathering, the research scope tends to expand in an unwieldy manner. In order to prevent that, it is necessary to determine the overall schedule and budget. At the very beginning, these will depend on various factors, including the scale of the business transaction and so on. Mm-hmm. After that, a team composed of the necessary members should be formed and information gathering started. Mm-hmm. The next step is the analysis of information gathered. During the performance of due diligence, you may discover missing information, and it gives rise to new topics for information gathering. Such cases are not rare. In my experience, it has often been the case that after the analysis step, it is necessary to perform follow-up steps. Gathering more information and performing further analysis are required.
In other words, it's necessary to follow up the procedure laid out in a well-defined plan. So what type of problem might arise if something was overlooked in due diligence?
Mm-hmm. Usually, problems arise after the agreement has been reached. A typical example is that the defect of the object of transaction is discovered after agreements. Mm-hmm. In some cases, a patent right was found to have been invalid. Mm-hmm. In another case, the patent does not have the assumed value actually.
Are there any example of failure you have encountered in the course of your career?
Yes, so for example, I received a request for a second opinion with respect to the result of patent evaluation. The initial result had produced a high evaluation because result says that it has an extremely important. However, after performing re-evaluation, we found that the patent invention was not actually in use. That didn't mean that the value of the patent right was zero, but it was substantially reduced as a result.
Okay. The next question is, have you encountered cases patent right being infringed because clearance search have not been done?
Yes, there have been such cases. For example, I have received a request to perform due diligence. In that case, business negotiations were already underway, under the assumption that there was no risk for patent infringement. During due diligence, it becomes apparent that there was certain degree of risk of patent infringement. At that time, the overall framework of the business had already been determined, but it was necessary to substantially modify the schedule of the negotiation in order to clear the risk.
And are there any successful example you could describe for us?
Yes, of course. I think that to be successful in negotiation, it is very important to follow proper procedures and invest adequate resources. Even if the scale of the transaction is small, the most important point should not be skipped. Namely, the essential information should be gathered and analyzed. In the case of large transaction, a fairly comprehensive evaluation can be obtained. It requires that appropriate specialists. In addition, the team needs to be operated very effectively.
I see. So it's very important to make necessary preparation in advance when laying out the plan for negotiation.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you very much. Okay, shall we move to the next issue? So that is the goal setting. I think during the preparation of negotiations, goal setting is also a very important factor. So do you have your own observation?
If you do not set a goal in advance, you may encounter cases in which you don't know how to respond to unforeseen information during the negotiation. Or your counterpart reacts in a manner different from what you predicted. I've received consultations regarding ongoing negotiations that has reached an impasse, namely, the negotiation is at the dead end. We found that gathering or analysis of information was insufficient before the negotiation. As a result, the objective of the negotiations weren't clear, or a partner hadn't been established, etc.
So in particular, such a problem occurs when something unexpected is encountered during the course of negotiation?
Yes, precisely.
In other words, an important lesson is that if you don't set goal in advance, so you may find yourself in a shaky situation at the negotiation table.
Yes, that's correct.
Can you share any example of such failure with us?
Yes. For example, I was consulted in relation to a joint development at the stage of contract negotiations. The discussion was underway under the assumption that general agreement had been reached as to the overall framework. In that case, it appeared that there had been an understanding that the engineer and the salesperson were in agreement. However, when it comes to the actual terms and conditions, there was a point that the expectations of both parties were different. Furthermore, there were points that individuals within the same company had different understandings.
So that means different details have not been adequately worked out in advance?
Yes, that's correct. The situation can be readily grasped at a glance when you say that a general agreement is reached as to the overall framework. However, when discussing specific details, such as numbers, scheduling, and so on, differences in understandings often surface at the negotiation table.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kimura. So today we have discussed the two necessary elements of due diligence and goal setting in the preparation stage for negotiation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.